You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Morgan Burkett, Eric Reed, Zach Chavalella, and we're coming off a very unconvincing win against the Panthers, but nonetheless, the Eagles are 11-2 going into a week where they'll be facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. But right now, we'll focus on a recap of the game. As Eric is ready to throw the tables and chairs at his computer. How you guys feeling tonight?
Better than Eric, I think.
I don't know if he can hear it because he doesn't have the headphones on.
Nah, he can't hear us. Blink twice if you're feeling angry. Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, he's doing all right. All right.
I can't complain about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Zach, how you feeling down there, man?
Man, I'm annoyed. I'm heated. Should be talking about an underwhelming win, and yet we have a different conversation today. So I'm a little pissed off right from the jump today.
Yeah, we'll definitely we'll dive into that. I don't want to. We're not. I think we could put. I mean, obviously, you guys already know this. We're not that kind of media outlet that's going to harp too much on something that's overblown. But we could definitely discuss it as Eric gets his kinks together on his end. But yeah, Brandon Graham, unfortunately, was live at a live show yesterday, and he did mention to a certain degree that there was a bit of a rift between AJ and Jalen, but it was, in my opinion, was taken out of context. I don't think that he meant that there's a rift. I think he just meant that, hey, like, you know, your relationship is bigger than football, but you guys, you know, you got to know that. Like, you don't know you should be able to talk to each other kind of thing. How do you guys feel about the second year in a row that we're having this conversation? I personally don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's a big deal to be made out of. I think it is what it is. BG said the wrong thing. John Clark came out saying that what he was hearing in the locker room is that there's nothing that this is not a thing. This is nothing to begin with. AJ and Jalen are good. Nick Sirianni said that these guys have a picnic at lunch every day. Like, things seem to be good internally, but obviously externally, the media has their hands on something fresh and something that they want to blow up out of proportion.
I mean, for me, it was interesting just because of the source. Like, BG just seems the opposite of the type to say anything like that or even remotely controversial. Like, he's such an A+ locker room guy. For him to slip up then, and you know, especially considering like he just sustained an injury and is not necessarily able to be a part of the fold positively on the field. You expect him to really hone in on him off the field and being a good leader. And we've praised the Eagles in the past on being able to keep that kind of stuff under wraps, especially it's tough with the Philly media, and it's unfortunate. But I think like my take on what it is to you got Jalen's focus somewhat divided in that he's learning a new system, a new offense that is asking a lot of him. And it's kind of like when you get a new babysitter or something like that, right? Like, when the babysitter kind of lets you get away with anything, you're best friends with your sibling, right? Like, you guys can do whatever you want, you never get in trouble. And then all of a sudden you get a more strict babysitter, and you guys aren't hanging out as much, and there's more rules, and it feels like there's kind of conflict in between you two just because you're not getting away with whatever you want anymore. Like, to put it into context, him and AJ were essentially freestyling all of last year. So, of course, they got to be best friends. They're doing whatever they want. And so, now there's a little more pressure on both parties. I feel like it's just like maybe on the outside looking in, the relationship seems like it's changed. But I don't read too much into it. But it is a little strange to know what source it came from. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, they're still working together after meetings and after practices. Like it's this. I don't know why that was said. I don't know if you don't know the ins and outs of something and you're speaking before you have any sort of proof. I don't know. I don't know why that would, especially from somebody who's on the roster, would say that. And I think that is kind of what makes a ton of this I guess news, because it's been debunked since. I understand. Brandon Graham says something, and to the effect of, well, they used to be friends. Well, what it sounds like is they still are friends, because Brandon Graham walked that back real quick. This whole thing is coming from a guy. Over the last few weeks, he said that the pass. Oh, and by the way, the only thing he said this week was the passing attack needs work. Wasn't just AJ Brown that said that. Literally everybody on the team has said the passing attack needs work. Brown has been hounded by questions almost specifically by guys like Rube, because if you watch the press conferences, you'll see his face asking the questions. And he's been hounded by the same kind of questions as, how do you feel about receiving less targets? And at the end of the day here, you're trying to get a wide receiver to admit at the end of the day that that they're happy with kind of not being in sync. Well, Hurts is complaining about the same thing. He says the passing attack needs to be in sync. Nothing that Brown said is incorrect. Every single thing that he said was, it's hard to be in sync when you're not getting many targets, which it is. And he wants to be in sync in the passing attack the same way that same way that Jalen Hurts wants to. And if you listen to what Kellen Moore says, listen to what Sirianni said, it's all about the wins is what's ultimately the point of all this. We all know going into the postseason that if you keep up with this passing attack, it's not gonna be up to snuff. It's not going to pass the test, if you will. And I think that's where everybody's getting at. Putting this on the back of Barkley and playmakers like specifically him, you can't do that this entire way through. And I think that the team is understanding that, and while they're successful, it is sort of a rally to be like, okay, we want to be successful on the other side of things. I think it's everybody being competitive and wanting to work towards that goal, and it's less of give me the ball, Keyshawn Johnson.
That's a fair assumption.
I want to make a couple things clear here.
Wait, time out. Is this like Sixers level things clear, or is this like we're okay clear?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Like,
Sixers level.
It's like the sky is falling, or is it kind of like it's cloudy, guys? It's just a cloudy day.
You're gonna see where I end up with it. Just hold on for the ride. AJ Brown. AJ Brown, right? Left things somewhat open, but by all means did not throw his quarterback under the bus. By all means did not say anything to instigate some type of locker room coup. Did not signal in any way that his relationship, his personal relationship, let alone his professional relationship, which is what we should really be talking about, with Jalen Hurts is fractured. Jalen Hurts has not signaled that as well. Brandon Graham, who I have a lot of respect for, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say somewhere in this post-surgery rehabilitation, something allowed him to slip up his words. That's what I want to believe. I don't know whether or not that's the actual case. Only he can say. He walked these words back pretty quickly. I would hope that means that he truly understands the error with which he spoke, and not just that the PR team quickly got on the phone, which I'm sure they did as well. What he said has absolutely been taken and ran with by media, by fans, but it was also bad on its own. It was a terrible choice of words. he is not the person who should be going about it that way. He's a leader in the locker room. I have no problem with him involving himself in this situation. But to do so on his own radio show, as opposed to speaking to these guys who he has plenty of access to and trying to solve things behind the scenes, undermining, mind you, his head coach, who you can say his head coach is inept at dealing with the situation. If that's your opinion, that's fine. You're allowed to have your opinion. But to deny him that opportunity is crazy. And again, I don't think that was Brandon Graham's intent. I want to make that perfectly clear. That is effectively what happened by going ahead and bringing this to the media. Brandon Graham brought this to the media. And he's not a guy who normally does this either, to his credit. So this is probably a one-time slip-up from Brandon Graham. I don't think this is going to have any lasting, horrific repercussions for this Philadelphia Eagles team. And that's why I'm not worried in the long term because of this particular situation. But this took the Eagles, who are already both local and national stories each and every week. Not just because there's certain things about this team that are, questionable, whether it be the passing game or odd, whether it be the head coach, but because they are one of the best teams in football. They are going to be in one of the most divisive cities, mind you. They are always going to be one of those top teams, not only on a local stage, but on a national stage as well. So with that being said, I have had people call me and bring the idea that ludicrous ideas of what's going on between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts personally leading to this. And I just want to say that is absolutely insane. And for anyone to believe that is an insane, and I'm not going to reference exactly what I had been told, somebody claiming this was sourced information, but it's absolutely ludicrous to think that the issue behind A.J. Brown saying what he said in his locker room is some massive conspiracy between their personal lives that people don't know about. That is a ludicrous idea. This team is fine. Their biggest problem is that they do have an issue with their passing attack. That is an on the field problem. That is their biggest problem. On the field, not in the locker room, not between them and the media, on the field. So that is what I need this team to focus on. And now that we have given this, not only AJ's comments, but Brandon Graham's comments, plenty of airtime, maybe now we can get back to being focused on football and trying to solve the problem that is the Eagles passing.
And so this could, I just got to point out real quick about the whole bringing the media into it. And, besides the questioning that's been happening for the past couple of weeks, I guess what my real beef is today that everybody's still talking about it like there's an issue. You see it on the Pat McAfee show. You see it in our market on 97.5 The Fanatic, and it's still brought up. Is there? They're talking about this big issue like it hasn't been debunked by the horse's mouth already. So I guess at the end of the day, the question is really simple. What is this news? What is it? It sounds like it was spoiled from the beginning. It sounds like there's nothing to it. So what are we talking about except trying to draw clickbait ratings?
Well, it's like high school again. Like people just need to talk about something. Like, and that's one thing that I admire.
They won 9 straight games.
Well, that's Pittsburgh. But look at it this way, right? This season,
negativity sells.
Exactly. When Nick Sirianni was acting like a basket case, that was the selling point. That was everything. That was everything. Anything that anybody could speak about was Nick Sirianni needs to go. Nick Sirianni got into the shadows, went behind the curtain, handled himself the proper way, and nobody's heard a peep out of it. They haven't had anything negative to say about this team because Saquon's been on a tear, a historical run. That's been a topic of conversation all season. Even Jalen's miscues haven't really been a focal point because of what Saquon has done and because nobody's really saying anything. So Brandon Graham just allowing this little crack of hope for people to get their fix on. It's going to explode. I mean, we're in Philadelphia, and I hate to say this, right? Because at this point, like these are our peers that are doing this, but it's always blown my mind that in this market specifically, it's always been media versus the team. Like the media wants to be more than what the team is. And that to me, it sucks because you should be supporting this team in every aspect of the game. Like we should be talking about the growth of, of Mekhi Becton. We should be talking about the growth of Nick Sirianni as a coach. Kellen
Who
Moore
has
coming
talked
into
about
his own.
Cam Jurgens this season and what an
Who-
amazing
I mean,
job he's
Exactly.
Quinyon Mitchell's been talked about to a point where it's not talked about enough still.
Yes.
We'll take
Like,
it.
what are we talking about? We're making up narratives that drive it away from a team who's literally clinched the playoffs. You got Dicker. You got the storyline that Barkley could have Dickerson's record for a single season. Hey, he just took Shady McCoy's. That was talked about for about 15 seconds. But hey, we're talking about things that don't exist. I need media in Philadelphia to do better. Cover their damn team.
I think Nick Sirianni might be the most talked about shaved head since Amber Rose back in the day. It's been a long time since a shaved head made that much news, and again, like now we're weeks later, and like looking back, it's so ridiculous, and here we are in a predicament again, where news in a couple weeks is going to be so ridiculous, and isn't it just a joy to be a part of the Philly sports media, man? It's
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to Brian talking about Jalen's miscues for a second because when a team's performing well, and I'll focus on Philadelphia, what I know best. Even when a team's performing well, there will be times where we can make this a full on media thing. It's not just the media too. Like there's a lot of fans that the reason why the media does this is because fans eat this up, right? When your team is doing well, there is still opportunity to focus on the negative from the star, right? A lot of people asking for more from the star, from, in this case, the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. There is still plenty to critique, and they have been, to critique Jalen Hurts in his game. But the problem is, when you're talking about the major criticisms in the way that Jalen Hurts has been playing, far more often, it's been, oh, well, he didn't find player X, player Y, player Z on the read who was open. But he still had 3 touchdowns on the day and they won the game. As opposed to, oh, well, he threw 3 interceptions in this game. He threw 5 interceptions, Jared Goff. Like, he's not doing that kind of stuff. Like, he's not turning the ball over. Like, I get it. He holds the ball for too long and he takes unnecessary sacks. That's a problem. It should be addressed. He has not found guys who are wide open on secondary reads. That's a problem. He's got to fix that. With that being said, he has not had a problem that has cost the team a game this entire season. Now, you go against the Bucs and you talk about that game, you can say that whole entire offense, mind you, without weapons, most of their weapons, I should say, just got shellacked, just got beat. That's not, oh, Jalen made X, Y, or Z mistake, and that's why they lost the game. They were just outplayed in that game severely. Whole team. Go against Atlanta. I mean, again, we can talk about time management. We can talk about Darius Slay. We can talk about Saquon Barkley. I don't think you can really talk about Jalen Hurts as the one and only reason they lost that game. Those are Philadelphia's 2 losses this season. So I say that just to say, like, they ran bone dry, the media, finding true negative things to talk about. Because even the negativity around this team, again, the areas that Jalen can get better or the areas of not good enough that Jalen has shown are frankly not that bad. And so instead of being proactive and being positive, well, here's how they can improve this, this, and this, and how they can overcome a team like Detroit, a team like Kansas City, or how about we talk about Pittsburgh, who they're playing on Sunday?
Yeah.
A novel idea. Instead of doing that, it's finding any way you can, any negative spin. And unfortunately, and this is the last time that I'm going to, mention his role in this, Brandon Graham gave them the perfect opportunity to do so. And he realized, so, like, I'm not saying, like, lord this over Brandon Graham for the rest of his career, for the rest of his life. He's very aware of what happened, and I think clearly regrets it. But that is what happened, is that this
do you think he's
ammo given.
You think he's maybe so smart and so used to the Philly media that he's like doing some kind of subterfuge activation of AJ Brown and like they're just gonna go for like 300 yards against the Steelers, like, and he just
No,
knew it the whole
That's
time.
exactly what's going to happen. Like,
No, like
I'm
I'm
kind
not
of
gonna lie.
kind of setting the stage for
AJ
like,
Brown's
AJ
a
Brown
must
to just
start for me
go
this week.
off. Like I'm kind of thinking maybe he's smarter than we even think he is.
but it could be one of those things like, the guy, like, things are off, right? The guys are off, right? And it could just been like Brandon Graham, where his locker is in the locker room is diagonally across from
we're getting the
AJ.
flex from the beat reporter now.
Yeah, there we go. Where is
Whatever.
it, Brian? Tell us more.
It's diagonally across from AJ, but it's close enough to Jalen, right? Like there's only a door separating them.
How many footsteps? How many paces?
God, come on now.
How many paces?
All right, we're talking about probably like.
Did you see Elliot Short Parks try to button Saquon Barkley's shirt? Were you around for that? Okay,
Was it you holding the
we'll
camera?
save that story for off pod, I guess.
15 steps to AJ and 8 to Jalen. But anyways, like, it's damn, I forgot my point, man. But you know what? This is just utter nonsense of what's going on. Like, this is only gonna motivate the team. And I feel like, that's where we go into our next subject, because we've been here before. This is not the 2023 Eagles. This is not the, shit, it's things are falling, the sky's falling. Like, this is just, hey guys, it's a little bit of a storm outside and we can get through it. AJ knows what he's doing with this. He's triggering the coaches to say, hey guys, Saquon is great, but Saquon, it can't just be Saquon. I feel like we've been saying that for weeks. Like, this passing attack has to be more than what it is. We're not using Devontae, and we haven't been using John at all. Johnny Wilson is out there, and he looks pretty good at times, but we barely use him. Hell, we use Grant Calcaterra more than we use anybody, and that's the fact of the matter. AJ should be getting touches, rightfully so. He's open. But on another note, like, my beef with Jalen is Jalen's been very hesitant on his reads. He's seen, like, that first play, people are saying that he didn't see AJ. He saw AJ open and he hesitated. Like, that's just a fact of the matter. So it's just like, what's going on that Jalen's not trusting himself? Like, is it the turnover issue, like, lingering in the back of his mind? Like, hey, I could throw it to AJ right here, but what if I miss? Like, what if, if I throw it short? What if I overthrow it? Like, what are they going to say about me, kind of thing? And I know he presents himself as somebody that doesn't care about what people say about him, but at the end of the day, like, you're the focal point of this team. You're going to be in a spotlight more than anybody. So he's been, I feel like he's just been super hesitant, and I'm expecting him to let it rip against Pittsburgh, but I feel like this was all, it could all have been, strategically done by AJ, by Brandon, to wake up this coaching staff, because we've seen way too much of. We've seen the extreme of everything. It's either they go extreme passing or extreme running. It's never a balanced attack, and that's going to hurt this team in the playoffs.
I'm going to put a little more respect on my Italian brother Calcaterra's name there. That's tight end 1, man.
No, but I love Calcaterra. I'm not gonna lie. Like, he's perfect for this passing game. But at the end of the day, like, he can't be the focal point. Like, he's not that guy.
Yeah, I mean, with the Calcaterra was wide open on that. Obviously, the pass goes right to him, and he scores his first touchdown. But I'm not going to sit there in front, like, see on the replays. So was Brown. Like, Brown was open a couple times on a slant. Just on that same drive. I'm not sure if that was his first read, and I only say that because that's what sounds like Moore was saying. Moore kind of takes the side of Hurts on this, and why I say that is because there's a few questions in listening to Moore's presser today where I kind of felt like he deviated from the question and kind of gave a different answer. I think Moore is doing that by design because I don't know that he knows exactly what Hurts sees on the read on the day that he gets in front of media for the presser. I don't know that they've looked at all the film quite yet. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But what I do think is that there's absolutely times where Hurts can be looking towards Brown. He can be looking down the field, and maybe he's seeing what the defenses are giving him, and he's making different reads. Why he saw Calcaterra catch some passes, intermediate. Maybe he stretched one pass that was a little bit underthrown to Smith down the sideline, but ended up being, I think, was his longest pass of the day. A lot of everything, as far as Hurts is concerned, I think he had like a 30-yard run in the second half. that kind of
That was
the running attack.
35 yards. That was
Yeah,
great.
the running attack once again kind of took over. I don't think that there's a lot of, I guess, purpose as far as like I'm not throwing to Brown. Everybody says Brown's always open. I tend to agree with that, but at the same time, is Hurts going to deliver the ball? That's always the best for Brown to get. And I think he's reading different things on the defense. This could be a matter of him just spreading the ball around. If you're spreading the ball around and getting the completions, that's all I care for. I don't care who catches the ball. I care that the passing attack works. But we can't sit here and just kind of take away the idea that Jalen Hurts, I don't think, has passed for 20 completions or more, and probably out of the last 9 games that the Eagles have won, probably did 2 or 3 times. That's not a high percentage of the passing attack being the forefront of the game. I look at and I kind of agree with what Moore's saying, even though he didn't really directly answer some of the questions. There are times where, the Eagles are looking for these shots downfield, but if they're not there, they're not forcing it. And it kind of goes back to, well, you have to win the explosive plays, which has been a big thing, coach speak, about Sirianni and about Moore. But you're also talking about, dude, it's like 12 touchdowns to 1 interception. I'll take that all day as far as protecting the ball, winning the turnover battle.
Which is not bad, but like you're missing, like, I don't want to say you're missing explosive plays, but you're missing, like, to me at least, like, Jalen needs to get the ball out of his hand quicker. Like, you gotta just let it rip. Just let it happen. Like, if you mess up, right? Like, it's gonna happen. It's a part of the game. But if you don't let it rip now, come playoff time, this team is gonna be in a blunder because he doesn't have that trust and he doesn't have that repetition in him to trust in his arm.
There were a couple plays that I agree with you on that. There was a couple of plays, especially the one where and I think everybody saw this and kind of questioned it the same sort of way. It was an RPO. He slides for a 9-yard loss, pretty much. He doesn't, get sacked necessarily, but he kind of slides on the RPO. And he, I think in a presser, he said that it would have been a legal man downfield. It would have been like a 5-yard penalty. Well, I'll take that penalty because it's like a 5-yard loss versus a 9-yard loss. Maybe you try to kick. I know the wind was suggested to be a little bit more than what everybody else gave it credit for, but maybe you don't have to kick. Maybe you're in a position to get that first down. Maybe you're not necessarily put in the defensive hands where, hey, if Leggett makes that catch, you're talking about a Panthers win. It is what it is. Like that. Tell me that game did not give you Eagles Falcons vibes.
My heart dropped the moment I saw that play. I could have sworn he caught that and just rolled into the end zone, but it like the whole vibe in the stadium, like everybody's heart dropped to their ass. It was just one of those moments like, shit, like this really just happened. Like, and especially in Philly, like this really just happened. You guys really let this team find their way back in. And granted, they've been playing great football over the last several weeks. I'm talking about the Panthers. They did it to the Chiefs, right? They were within 3. But, like, this is the team that has been steamrolling their opponents, and you expect them to steamroll the Panthers.
Well, that's absolutely true. I think it's a great comparison, Brian. Like, you talk about the Chiefs, and, like, man, they've not looked good this year. And we're not having the same conversations about the Chiefs as we are the Eagles, right? Like, the Eagles, it's like, oh, like, woe is me, this is problematic, this is catastrophic. And meanwhile, the Chiefs have barely beat some teams that should be blowouts this year. Their offense hasn't looked good. Their defense isn't as good as we thought they were going to be. And I don't think they're having the same conversations about, Kansas City. Granted, when you're a dynasty, you're afforded some leeway on that front. But I mean, like, talking about, the game in general and going back to the passing attack is like, I don't think that was a well-called game on either side of the ball. Like, I don't think that was Kellen Moore's best game by far. I think it was actually a pretty poor game in terms of the game plan. And then Vic Fangio too. Like, I don't think defense really called a great game. They're kind of okay, but they clearly wanted to stop the run early on. And then as soon as they started kind of, letting some plays up, they just didn't have a plan. So one thing I think is just like that seemed like an unprepared Eagles team, to be honest. And I think they won just because they're straight up better. But You can't overlook opponents in the NFL, and it's a young coaching staff still outside of Vic Fangio, obviously, no offense, but they're still learning. And I think that's one of those cases, like they played down to their opponent. And granted, like you said, the Panthers have been playing well, but I think overall the Eagles, like that was a pretty poor game in a lot of areas, and it's being overlooked by the passing attack. And it has to get better, but the plays that Eric's talking about, and granted there was the pass to Calcaterra, which was a touchdown. There's also the touchdown pass to Devontae Smith. AJ Brown's wide open. It's like, man, we're talking about touchdowns. Like, we're sitting here 6 points on the board, and we're saying, well, you should have thrown it to someone else. Who gives a fuck? Like, honestly, who gives a flying fuck? Like, man, if that's the case and we're nitpicking that, like, go watch a different sport, man. Like, it's football. A touchdown, like, it could be the ugliest touchdown in the world, and this is where it changes. Like, Kansas City scores some ugly ass touchdowns, shit that shouldn't happen. And they have other things open. Every team does it, but for here, like for Philly, it's a problem. Like, oh, he should have been hitting here, should have been hitting here. Now, the play that stands out to me is that deep flood concept, right? You have AJ Brown open on the corner. That's been circulating around social media, and granted, he's got to throw that, right? That's an NFL level read. You have to throw that. He's open, honestly, wide open in the NFL, but that's where I think, we've been talking about it for weeks, like the deep passing game, something's off. And finally, we kind of get to see the zoomed out picture. And, as much as you're saying, Jalen Hurts is hesitating, I just don't think his eyes are in the right position. And I think that's something that he's being asked to read a defense a little differently than how he had. Like, granted, I don't think he was asked to read a defense at all last year. I think they're just like, hey, man, pre-snap read, throw it to your best guy. And, like, there goes your read. So, now Kellen Moore is teaching him how to read the defense. It's taking some time. And like that play also, we're talking about a completion for 5 yards. And, like it's not like it was like, wow, he got sacked for a loss of 15 or threw an interception or, anything like that. Like, he's got to throw that. And these are those type of things that if you see that on film at halftime, you go, hey, AJ's open, just let it loose. Right. And then the game plan kind of, again, like I just don't think the game plan, but that's like an easy correction. Just throw it, man. He's open, right?
Do you
That's an
think
easy
he's
correction.
overwhelmed? Like even with the RPOs, like he's holding the ball a little longer with RPOs, and he's not like it just seems like there's too much going on up there for him to trust whatever he needs to do.
I just think it's night and day from last year. I just think you're actually getting corrections this year. Like, for example, like Eric's talking about that slide. Well, what happened? Literally, like before that, like I think was it last week where they got a penalty for like a man downfield because Jalen Hurts threw the ball away, right? So then this week, going into the week, they're like, hey man, if that happens again, just slide. So he's just going, oh, I just slide in this situation, right? And like, it sucks to have a loss of 9 yards, but that is the right thing to do to avoid the penalty. Now, you obviously don't want to do it for 9 yards. You try and at least wiggle a little bit, see if you can get upfield, but. Like I just feel like it's like, hey, listen, you're getting corrections this week. You have to correct it. I don't know if it's a matter of being overwhelmed. I just think those things take time. And like how much time is Jalen Hurts afforded, right? He's getting a new coordinator every year. He's been asked to do new things. They're winning games. Nick Sirianni is has one of the best winning percentages of any coach of all time. And here we are talking about, on a touchdown, it should go to AJ. Like, are we fantasy managers right now? Like, are we analyzing football? Like, I feel like we're just, fear mongering and like all that stuff in the media. And it's just like, man, like this reminds me of the Jacksonville game. And all of a sudden, Eagles are screwed. It was close against Jacksonville, who had been keeping every single game close up until then. Same with the Panthers last couple of weeks. And how many times have we talked about the Jacksonville game since it happened? After that week, it was, it's a blip on the radar. I think this game is going to be the same thing.
Yeah, I think the only reason why there is a little bit of a discussion even about this, about who's getting the ball or whatever, is because it's been a media lead, and it's what it has been over the last 2 weeks. It's media going up to Brown and talking about how the passing attack and the lack of targets because of Saquon, the rushing attack. Well, Saquon's getting an uptick in targets. Saquon has been earning those uptick in targets and uptick in touches, and doing a fine job at that. So those lack of targets to receivers are Saquon touches. And I mean, if that's helping you win the game, that's helping you win the game. Now, if Hurts is making one read and it's not probably getting you to yards or averages or moving the chains like another read would, Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be mistakes that quarterbacks make. I think that we are overcritical on a guy that is, in other words, in discussions at points where he would be an MVP caliber quarterback. Now, you're saying, hey, we got passing options, we got passing weapons. Why aren't they utilized more often? That's you can't necessarily force that all the times, but you also have a MVP caliber running back too. Like it's a little bit different than having a DeAndre Swift before. And I think that the difference between the criticism that Hurts gets and the criticism that, like, say, I don't know, like other quarterbacks around the league, like a Trevor Lawrence or whatever, I don't know, like anybody like that, it's like, yeah, one's on a winning team, the other one's just kind of expected to be who he is. It is what it is in that sense. Like no one's looking at the Jaguars, and saying like, hey, we expect Trevor Lawrence to be playing at this level. If Joe Burrow makes a wrong read, and he made a ton of them last night, I thought, against the Cowboys. I was sitting there almost the entire game and saying like, hey, maybe not throw the ball the entire game to to Jamar Chase. Like, I get it. He's your primary. He's your number one. But, like, this could be a much better passing attack against this team if you, like, spread the ball around. There are open guys left, right, and center. Also open guys left, right, and center, against the Bengals, too. They have a pretty bad passing defense. But at the end of the day here, the argument about those quarterbacks and the criticism that they get, like I look at Burrow as being an MVP kind of caliber quarterback too. He's just not on the MVP team that it's gonna matter.
Yeah, he's definitely a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Right. And I think that's why he's not getting the criticism that Hurts does get. It's because Hurts is on a team that's a top 5 team in the NFL. You look at and Burrow, and you're saying, well, why does Burrow get a pass? Well, while he is just as talented, the Bengals are what they are.
I agree with that.
I want to hear from Zach, but sorry, Zach, I don't mean to cut you off. There is one point that I wanted to bring up. They're talking about Justin Herbert in the chat, and they're also talking about the Eagles being 31st in passing offense. Just two quick points. Is one, it's okay for Justin Herbert to be better at some things than Jalen Hurts, and them to both be good quarterbacks. I get so tired of that argument. Like, Tom Brady is better than Peyton Manning at certain things, and that doesn't mean that Peyton Manning is shit. And Peyton Manning's better than Drew Brees at some things, and that doesn't mean he's shit either. Like, Justin Herbert is not rushing for 30 fucking touchdowns a year. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's okay. It's okay.
They all have their special abilities that you can't really
100%.
compare them.
And then the thing about the 30th in pass offense, the Ravens have a historic offense this year compared with, the Rams, the greatest show on turf. And who won that game? That's it.
Well, I was going to kind of touch on like a similar point, talking about the Eagles are last in pass attempts, or rather, I believe the term was passing offense, which is a generic way to say passing yardage. That's what they're 31st in. Like, they are dead last in the league in passing attempts per game, which skews those numbers because they've been able to be, because their running game has been so efficient, so effective. They've dominated the clock. They haven't had to throw the ball for 40 times a game like bad teams like the Cleveland Browns have had to, because they're playing down all the time. When you look at this team, and I don't think you can pigeonhole it just to one stat, but just to kind of give one converse passing stat, Philadelphia is 6th in passing yards per attempt. I mean, that just shows that there's levels to this. Like, it's not a one
They're
for
efficient
one.
with what they're doing.
They're efficient with what they're doing. And the thing that I want to say about Jalen Hurts is this is what I think gets lost. It cannot be denied that Jalen Hurts is a skilled quarterback. I think that there's far too often a desire to kind of overcorrect and say, oh, because he held on to the ball too long here, or oh, because he missed A.J. Brown here, he's not a good quarterback. He shouldn't be in the league. He's not league average or much better. We've seen him play phenomenal football before, right? So we've seen the arm. The question is not the arm either. People bring that up. Like, you watch him actually play. The question is not the arm. You can say legitimate things about, is he processing the defense? Is he reading the defense right? And I think that's fair to bring up. And kind of to Morgan's point, there's kind of been a little bit of an uneven process for Jalen. And I think that we could be, and I would take, no offense to everyone else here, but Morgan, just with your coaching experience, maybe your opinion more so than anyone else here, even. But
Hey, whoa! I coach Madden,
reporter,
bro.
sit down.
I'm a professional in Madden. What do you mean?
Okay, all right.
My team is undefeated. Damn it!
At the inconsistency that he's had coaching wise, and I have hated this crutch of an argument that's been made for Jalen for so long. But it's not just about different offenses; it's about tendencies, right? It's about you can have two good coaches tell you that the key to doing something is two different things, right? So with all of that back and forth, is there any possibility that there is, and I feel like people are going to run with this with a negative connotation, just the development hasn't been there because of that inconsistency. People always talk about, well, just not being comfortable, but what about development too? I mean, you're not learning necessarily how to improve upon what you already know if you're resetting back to the factory settings every offseason, right? So, with this constant change in coaching carousel, not only is the playbook different every year, but on top of that, the tips and tricks to how to succeed in the game as a quarterback are changing every year. And sometimes you're getting, a great voice in your ear. Sometimes you're getting a not so great voice in your ear. I think Kellen Moore is a good voice to have in your ear if you're Jalen Hurts. But now a lot of that information is not only, again, new, but you probably have conflicting information that's been taught to Jalen Hurts across not even just his pro career, but going back to his collegiate career as well. So I don't say that to make excuses for Jalen Hurts. What I am merely trying to say is that there's clearly a skilled player there, and the focus should be trying to unlock that skill rather than declare that this guy is unable of doing this.
There's an example that I'd like to use on that, and I'll kind of omit actual details about it, but there's in Canadian university football there's a team. They haven't lost a game in 5 years leading up to this. They've been dominant, and their defensive line coach left this year to go be DC at a different school. They lost their first game, and nothing changed on their defensive line. Same guys across the board. No other coaching changes. Just one guy, just defensive line coach. And in the championship game against a pass-heavy team that had barely made it over 100 yards all season, ran for 330 yards against them. Just with the defensive line coach changing. Every other coach is the same. Every other player is the same. Like, this stuff matters, man. It truly does matter. And whether it's your steps being different, your technique being different, where your eyes are supposed to go, it makes a huge difference. So I like exactly what Zach's saying, man. Little tiny differences. One coach is going to tell you one way, one coach is going to tell you the other. Doing that year in and year out, it just delays the process.
And you can kind of like relate that to what they're doing with the offensive line, right? Like Mekhi Becton was considered a bust in New York. He was considered unworthy of an extension, of being an offensive line starter, whatever the case may be. He comes to Philly, and the guy looking like an all-pro guard, not even a tackle where he was drafted to play. And those little differences do make a huge difference on these guys' careers from even any sport, like baseball, pitching wise. You get the right pitching coach around the right guys, you could have a guy that was considered a back of the rotation kind of guy turn into a stud, an ace.
Can we not make this a Mets podcast, man? We know you're talking about Sean Manaea, all right? Just move off it.
Oh, you want to talk about? We could talk about baseball. Let's talk about baseball right now.
Yeah, let's talk about we could talk about the new Bobby Bonilla. We could do that.
Oh God, please! I'm so tired of the bullshit from every fan that's not a Mets fan. Because had he signed with the Yankees, it'll be like, oh my God, we got so.
No one would have cared. He would have stayed with the team he's on.
Time out. If he signed with the Phillies, you can't say I'm wrong about this. PSN would have exploded, erupted, and just confetti everywhere. Like
he's supposed to go to the Jays, man. He's supposed to go to the Jays. What happened?
He would have been an outfielder who doesn't catch a ball.
Listen,
I don't know what confetti. I don't know what we're talking about.
I need you to stop drinking with Zach, okay? All that haterade is not looking good for you right now.
All right,
listen,
I mean, I'm
you
just
know
saying,
that I don't leave any for anyone else.
wasn't Max Scherzer supposed to be like, a guy that was like really
back end of his
good?
career, and they paid
Did you
him all
guys
that money.
did you guys pay him a ton of money and look how that worked out?
Listen, it
I'm
happens.
gonna
But
have a
hey,
Bobby Bonilla day for the rest of my
It
life.
happens a
It's
lot
gonna be
more for the Mets
fantastic.
than it does other teams, though. You have to admit that.
I like how I was just talking about like, developing guys, and you guys developed a whole nother conversation about
Yeah.
something that's very irrelevant to this. But yes, Juan
Developing.
Soto is a Met, and you guys could kick rocks for about it.
We were developing pretty good.
The fact of the matter is this. I do agree with what you guys are saying. Jalen hasn't had the consistency that he's had. And listen, this year, it sucks that let me rephrase this. It doesn't suck that they're in the position that they're in, right? It's great to have them be a Super Bowl caliber team. But it sucks that they are in this position because now expectations have risen across the board where like you're expecting this guy to look like how he looked in 2022 under a different coordinator who doesn't fall off the branch of a Nick Sirianni. Like these are two different guys, two different philosophies, two different schemes that they're trying to mesh into one and make it work, which is like I'm assuming is why they rely so much on the running game, not just because of Saquon Barkley, but it's because it's working and they can explore other options off of that. So if Kellen Moore is here next year, which I believe he will, I don't think he's in a whole head coaching job anywhere. It would be great to see how this team progresses. But in the very like nature of the moment, they have to find some type of way of developing a rhythm between this passing offense. It can't just be Saquon. You got to find a way to make it work with Jalen. I've never been a big fan of just straight verticals, anything that sort. Get AJ in the middle of the field, get Devontae in the middle of the field. Just make things simplify things. And then they just simplify it. I remember when the Eagles defense was too complex when Jim Schwartz was under it. And a lot of the new guys couldn't get it to handle. And Malcolm Jenkins approached him at halftime and said, "Hey, like let's simplify things for the guys, and that way we can make it work." And it ended up working, and the defense actually ended up looking 10 times better than how they were looking in previous games. That approach needs to happen now. Of all times, it has to happen right now.
I will say, I don't know how much more you can simplify this offense. Is my one kind of caveat to that. So
I would take out the RPO, honestly. It's.
I mean, I'm for it. I'm not a big. I think the RPO was great for a time, and then the league kind of figured it out, and it's not as effective anymore. I would much rather kind of see a lot more under. I mean, listen, under center we've talked about all season long, and running play action and everything such as that. I would still love to see that. If you want to say like run Jalen under center, roll him out to the right, and run AJ over the field, just nice, simple kind of connects, whether it's a slant, an in route, or you want to develop any kind of, more long term developing plan. Like we saw Saquon too. Like, don't forget this. Like, there's been times where we've seen him run some great routes out of the backfield. Like, I don't think that Philadelphia can necessarily go away from trying to open up their weapons. But I think especially when we're talking about that first quarter drive, the scripted plays, I think this is where you can kind of focus on this a little more, maybe be more direct. Maybe it's not, and this may sound like I'm kind of conflating, but maybe not about simplifying necessarily, but just be more direct, like cut out the cutesy stuff, cut out even, the RPOs as much, but let's make sure that we're building good snowballable habits, like the things that can kind of snowball into an effect. You're building that confidence early on. That's one thing that I think is true kind of in most sports, and I think it's definitely true in football. And you see it a lot with running backs. Guys who they get going after you give them a few carries. Right? Just getting the opportunity, but also getting just little bits of chunk positive yardage. That's huge for confidence, and I think that can be the key for a lot of guys in their offense and kind of get it going. And we've seen that, with Jalen, where like once he starts to get a couple things going together, he starts feeling the flow of the offense a bit better. But they're just not getting to that point soon enough in games. So how do you do that sooner? I think it comes down to again the scripted plays, which is like I feel like I'm screaming into a void that we're still talking about this, but even with the improvements we've seen from the team, I don't feel like the first drive has gotten better. I think that they've had more successful first drives, but I don't think objectively it's gotten better. I think that there's a big difference there.
And to expand off that a little bit, it's not only just the first drives that haven't gotten better, it's the first quarter that hasn't gotten better.
We're not seeing much, and we're heading into what, week 14, week 15 at this rate. We haven't seen any progress on that front, and it's not. I don't want to sound like it's one of those topics that we're beating the dead horse, right? But come Super Bowl time, come playoff time, like first quarter is gonna matter. It's pivotal. Like you got to set the tone, and for some weird reason, like it just seems like they're either overwhelming Jalen or they're just overcomplicating things. Like I get that you want things to work, but it's just, and Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, like it just doesn't feel like it's this hard to put a sustainable drive within the first quarter. Like it doesn't feel like it should be this hard.
I mean, I know I coach football, but I can't answer all of those questions, man. I don't know. Like it might be that hard. I'm not sure. What stands out to me though is it's not the same look that every defense is giving you, right? And so, there's one thing where it's like if you're trying to do the same thing over and over again, and the defense has just found a way to stop. Like for example, we talked about the RPO. It's hard to read someone that doesn't move, so you just tell them, hey, don't move, stay there. There's no read, right? Easy. So if your entire offense is based around the RPO, you're getting off to a slow start because someone's figured it out. That's one thing, but it to me, it's a mentality. Like I don't know what it is about like stuff not clicking. The scripted plays would definitely help. You only have so much time during the week to prepare. I feel like they definitely need to take a chunk out of some of that time to just, go through the script and prepare plays that work. But like, to me, it's like, hey man, like I think the focus, or I don't know, the messaging is like, hey, let's figure out what this team wants to do to stop us, and then we'll adjust. And that's been working in the second half, which is great. So keep preaching that. But, the flip side of that mentality is we get off to slow starts. And so I don't know if it's a change in the messaging or a change in how they approach the week, but like, it's not as if that, you're getting, +1 blitzes all the time and you're having a hard time handling it up front. It's like, man, sometimes we're just not good running the ball. Sometimes we're not good passing the ball. Sometimes we're having trouble against zone teams. Sometimes we're having trouble against man. And sometimes the deep passing, it's the short passes. Like everything they've tried to do differently during these, initial quarters just hasn't looked good. And to me, that's beyond always game planning. And sometimes it's just like, hey guys, we need to kick it into gear. And, we need a kick in the butt here. Like, I don't know what that is. But like, last week they just tried to run the ball with Saquon, and he didn't look that good. And like, how do you solve that? Is that different play calling? Is that, what I mean? Like, there's something there that they need to figure out during the lead up to the game, because solving it in game, like you guys are saying, like that doesn't work in the playoffs when you're playing a team that, like the Lions. Let's be honest, that's the team to beat right now. You can't not score in the first quarter against the Lions, realistically, and have a good chance of winning. And you can still beat them, but that's tough, right?
So we saw some things work out in the pass and attack just by younger, more mobile, no, not more mobile, but as mobile quarterbacks like Bryce Young. He's able to run some things out of the boot, play action. I mean, why not kind of use that? You're running the ball so effectively. You're the best running team with the running back, all season. I mean, just by yards, right? So when do you use the run game to set up the pass instead of just like, forcing the run game? I do think that there is a lot of meat left on the bone because, maybe there's not enough utilization of Hurts's mobility to get out of the pocket and throw the ball. Kind of work those hash marks, find an open sideline that has, more room to kind of work with, send some out routes or some in and outs or whatever it may be, to send a slant with some of the guys in the slot, use a tight end whip or a drag, wherever you guys want to call it. It doesn't have to be a shot downfield, but it can be something that turns into yak yards, and that's going to open up the pass, and that's going to open up the run. It's not going to make you as reliant on the run, but it's all about still using the run to open up a bigger agenda. I mean, listen, I've never coached a down of football in my life. Why is this an idea coming from me?
It feels like a great idea, right? Like, it's like, wow, like I just thought about something
I
innovative.
mean, I haven't really seen it too much, so I wonder, how much of it is I mean, it has to be an idea by the guys that are getting paid a ton of money. I'm not gonna, sleep on that, but at the same time, it's like, well, why haven't we seen it?
So yeah. I don't have an answer for that. I'll be honest, because my questions are your questions at the end of the day. And I feel like we should just show up to NovaCare and just start asking questions with a pen and a notepad. But we spent majority of the podcast talking about the offense, talking about Jalen, talking about the Eagles. So I do want to give some love to the defense and figure out what's going on that end, because it wasn't as impressive as a matchup that we expected it to be. Like early on, we did see the pressure. We did see some sacks. We did see some good coverage. But later on in the game, it seemed like they switched to a bit of a soft zone defense, and you started seeing Bryce Young kind of come to life and finding his wide receivers. Minor setback for a bigger comeback, or is it just a blip on the road for the Eagles defense?
I mean, I think you got to give credit to the OC in Carolina, man. Like, I think he called a really good game. I think what you saw is the run game early kind of exhausted the linebackers from the Eagles, and then you're talking about I think just communication on the back end when you lose what 3 safeties right in the game, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson came in, came out, and was battling out there, but clearly not at 100%. I think that's huge, and that's huge from top down, just in terms of communication. When you're getting into zones, like, it just hurts, right? And that's a smart coordinator over there on that one side. I think with the run game early, that's really where I had the most questions. And I think what happens, right, is you're getting this defensive line to really penetrate against the run, right? And so they're getting upfield. I mean, you've seen Jalen Carter how many times just like be in the backfield off his first step, right? And so the thing that opens up when you're asking defensive line to penetrate is gaps, right? Like, they're getting downfield, gaps kind of open up. And so usually what's been happening is Zach Bond just comes in and clears everything up, right? But what you saw instead is Vic Fangio walked everyone up on the line of scrimmage, right? They're going 6 guys to the line of scrimmage. Like, who's flowing to the football? Right, everyone's penetrating. Who's flowing to the football? And all of a sudden, gaps open up. You're seeing the defensive line have to get off their blocks early and kind of rally to that. So I think that, I don't know, like, again, like, not a great game plan this week in general on both sides of the ball. I think they're just going, hey, Bryce Young's a young quarterback. Let's show pressure every play and see if that works out. And lo and behold, it didn't. And then you're seeing, okay, well, let's go back to zone. I just feel like it was an underprepared team this week. I don't think it's, I think, again, it's just a blip on the radar, but that's what it seems to me. And, we've seen it before. Unfortunately, like, I think the early losses were more of players not understanding Vic Fangio's scheme, but every coordinator is as much experience as you have is going to have trouble at some point. And I think that's a really good play caller there they have in Carolina.
Okay.
So that's
I was going to let you go on that because I have an idea.
No, I mean, honestly, like, I feel like you guys kind of covered it a lot, and the one thing I think that you have to give Carolina credit for, which doesn't get mentioned that often, and I think people are kind of like quick to I don't know, maybe I'm sentimental because they're on my fantasy team. The return of Adam Thielen does actually mean something to that team. To get a veteran wide receiver who legitimately knows what he's doing, not only is huge for a guy like Bryce Young, to instill that confidence in him that he has that sure target, but on top of that, it opens up the rest of the field because he's such a distraction out there. I mean, one thing that we've been talking about, and it's almost kind of cross sport, anything where you have multiple guys on the field at the same time, is that kind of like gravity that a true impact player can create. And laugh if you will, say what you will about Adam Thielen, his short hands and good solid route running gives him a lot of gravity that he pulls defenders away, and that opens up a lot of space for
He was
guys
everywhere in
that
that game.
he was everywhere. And I feel like, and Morgan, you mentioned this earlier, and this is what I think the kind of biggest, if you're looking at things that went wrong, the biggest problem that went wrong, the Eagles just they slept on their opponent. Like, that's the biggest problem, if you ask me. And like, there's things that can be done to rectify the poor passing attack from Jalen Hurts, in terms of reading, in terms of recognizing pressure coming in. Jordan Mailata was vocal about things the offensive line can do better next time out. And they're going to have a much tougher task going against Pittsburgh. But you can't sleep on a young and hungry team. That's exactly what Carolina is right now. So that's something that it's not necessarily going to be a concern now through the end of the year. I think that every team that they play short of Pittsburgh, basically, I guess you could argue Washington, but they handled Washington so handily last time that it's just something about that game they rose up for. Maybe they're really feeling the rivalry, but
They
we
step
look
up
at
for the
New
big
York.
games. I mean, Baltimore, and then like you said,
So Pittsburgh
Washington.
and Washington, you feel more confident about, but you look at New York and you look at Dallas. Those teams are shells right now, man. Especially Dallas after that last game. So it's probably not going to affect them at this point going forward. But that doesn't mean that mentality is not an issue, right? Because you're one, like quote unquote, easy playoff matchup away from losing in your first playoff game because you, again, have underestimated your opponent. So they need to figure that out real quick.
If I'm, being honest and kind of from what I saw from the Eagles against the Panthers, I'm not confident, necessarily against the Steelers. Like, that's a team that I, on paper, are going ahead of this, think that, they probably have a more stubborn defense. They have, an offense that I think has probably, more weapons than I think the Panthers had. And I knew the Panthers were playing better ball. The Steelers, they've played better than the Panthers throughout the season.
Well, they won't have Pickens for the game. He's doubtful right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think Pickens at the end of the day here,
They
obviously
didn't
is
need him last
talented.
week.
Man,
Obviously,
I want to see Pickens versus CJ Gardner Johnson so bad.
yeah,
That's
like
crash
obviously,
out versus crash out. Like that would be crazy.
like obviously Pickens is talented, but I kind of think he would be a detriment to the team because exactly what Morgan was kind of getting at. I think there's a lot of players on the Eagles who would get underneath the skin and then you'd be throwing a fit. Yeah, I look, I don't, and again, going against Washington again, I don't think that game was so handed, as far as a win there. Remember the Eagles not really separating from that game for a while there. Granted, the defense kept Philadelphia in the game, but I think that's what we're going to see. I think the Philadelphia is going to have to rely on the defense a lot more. Now, going back to the point about Carolina, it was kind of a mix of what you guys were saying. I think there was a lot of, we're going to try to pressure Bryce Young. We're going to try to make him show that, he's really stepping out of his shell in the NFL. We're going to, force him to make plays, and he did. And also, when it came down to situations where they had to convert, he knew his safety valve, and you're dead on. It was stealing the entire time. And it was stealing when a ball was tipped in the air. I forget if it was Jalen Carter at the line, or it might have been might not have been Jalen Carter, might have been whatever. I'm kind of blanking on names right now.
No worries, yeah.
But regardless, there was a ball tipped in the air, and you're kind of sitting there going like, "Oh, that should have been the end of it." No, it's not, because stealing didn't allow it to be the end of it. I mean, I guess you can throw in, a little bit of a lack of personnel too. I really wasn't blown away by McCollum, but I also realized that that was McCollum's first NFL start. So, I mean, like, there's that, but I don't think that weighs as heavily as what you two said about the defense, kind of going on in that game. But if that's what we're kind of working it with and going into Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh gives a little bit of a fight, just like Carolina does, if not more of a fight. And I think Philadelphia is still on upset alert. They're not off the hook quite yet.
If they could, I mean, listen, if they could come into this game, put the clamps on Steelers and just move past this, I feel a lot better, right? So I think my next question to kind of end the show with you guys is, are you guys at all concerned about this team now heading into the playoffs, and I mean heading into the final stretch of the season, actually?
I'm not concerned. I feel pretty confident, if I'm being flat honest. I think that there are still things to improve on. I think that's the case for most every team. this time of year, and whether that's working in new pieces like the Detroit Lions are, because they've had to deal with injury and now they're rotating new guys in, especially defensively, or if you are continuing to kind of unlock your squad like a team like Green Bay is. Like, there's always things to work on throughout the entire season. So, from a chemistry perspective, just to kind of circle back to that extremely quickly, no, I'm not worried about that with this team. From an offensive perspective, I would like to see more out of the passing game. I would like to see, I think Duck mentioned earlier, as a joke, running a 2-minute offense to start the game. I wouldn't do it against Pittsburgh. I don't hate the idea, just to kind of gain some confidence. If you want to perhaps try and catch, Washington with their pants down or something like that, and just kind of run no huddle right from the start. You need to see improvement. I don't think that it's to the point where I would say if they don't improve in this area, they do not have a chance in the postseason. I think they have a chance to win it all, even if they don't figure out the first quarter. I would feel a hell of a lot better if they started to make progress on not being able to score or even gain yardage in the first. But I don't think it's going to hold them back necessarily either. So I feel pretty confident.
I
think,
don't.
Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead, Morgan.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't feel that the throughout the rest of the season there is such a, I guess, should you be terrified of the Eagles giving up a game here and there? No, I kind of thought about this the other day. If there's a loss, like if they were to lose to Pittsburgh, right? And I know that no one wants to hear this, and I save it for somebody else because I'm going to say it anyway. But if they were to lose to Pittsburgh, then I don't feel necessarily as bad as that, for that, because I think that's more of a wake up call. I think that's something that Sirianni kind of mentioned this. Enjoy the win because when you lose, you're going to eat yourself up about it. Well, maybe they haven't had that humble pie yet that really sets it into the next gear. That maybe it hasn't, and maybe that's true. I said before the season that the Eagles were going to lose 3 games. It could be that one of those games is one of those gimme games when it's week 17, whatever it is. But if it's not, and you have your starters on the field and you're struggling in that sense, then I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing. I look at trap games right now, and I'm saying, well, why aren't you winning these trap games by a wider margin? Why are they so close? Why was it that the Panthers, margin replicated sort of what, the Ravens margin was, or things like that? Because no one's going to sit here and say the Panthers are an elite team. The Ravens, elite team, right? Like that's probably elite within the AFC. So I'm thinking to myself here, do the Eagles need a kind of a fire lit underneath their ass? Yeah, probably. And when you kind of have this comfort in, oh, we're going to work on the passing game, but the point is to try to win games. Yeah, the point is to try to win games, but the point is to play at your optimum as well. There's another point to that. I think that, winning games at this point, when the objective, it's not the full objective. It's most of the objective. I want to win the games at our best. I don't want to win the games at limping into a win. That's exactly what you saw against the Panthers. You limped into a win because Leggett dropped the ball. That's so at the end of the day here, you do have a little bit of worry, but if they can prove to you that in the next 2 weeks, because 2 weeks is really the meat and potatoes of the next 2 competitive games of the regular season until I think backups are more prevalent. Within the next 2 weeks, if they can prove to you that they're starting to get right, division game, Pittsburgh has a solid defense, then maybe we talk about feeling a little bit more comfortable. But you got to see it first. I'm not going to sit here and just say, "Oh, the Eagles, look at their record, I'm comfortable." That's an old story that we've soured on many times before.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what's said. Like I think that the passing game for me is the biggest one. And we talked about a lot about AJ Brown, but Devontae Smith is another one, man. Like, I just don't see him being as engaged and as involved in the offense. Like, I think with the whole controversy, and again, not to get back into it, but you realize how much of a consummate professional that Devontae Smith is, because we haven't heard a peep, and that's just who he is. But they do need to get these guys involved, and it's really hard to manufacture that with a week's notice going into your first playoff game. And the only reason I say that realistically is not because I don't think the Eagles, are completely susceptible to a trap game. Like, I think that they understand the stakes, and they've been here before, and I don't think they want to one and done again. But if you look at the playoff picture right now, like you could be facing like a team like the Packers in the first round, right? Like, that is a good team, and you beat them in week 1. And they've been playing some really good football as of late. The other team you might be playing, Washington, could potentially be playing the Rams again. I don't think there's I don't really see the Seahawks or the 49ers. Like, I don't know where they're at, but like, there's some really good teams in there that aren't like in years past. Like, you played the Bucks last year. Like, I think the Packers right now are much better than the Bucks were last year. Right. And so you could face a really good team here that just didn't win the division for whatever reason, whether it's injuries, whether it's, hitting their stride at the right time or not getting enough wins early in the season. But that's what worries me is I think to beat some of these teams, you need to be firing on all cylinders. And for me, it's that just getting your guys active. And I think that you have a great opportunity here, talk about what you will about strength of opponent, man. Like, these are division games. You have 3 division games to end the season. You need to get going, right? You need to get these guys going. And however that is, like, I would take almost like some of these games might not matter. I would take those don't matter games to just figure it out on offense. How does it work to get Devontae Smith the ball? How does it work to get A.J. Brown the ball? Where do they like the ball? Where can we throw it? Honestly, if you drop an entire play just to isolate Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on one side of the ball, you go, what can we run here? I don't care about the rest of formation. We'll run play action, Saquon Barkley, and just run a 2-game. Like, it's essentially like basketball, right? You run the pick and roll. You have 2 passes off of it. What works? And you just do that the whole game until it works. I think that would be probably a good idea. But you need to get that going defensively, healthy. You need to get healthy, and you can't go into the playoffs without those safeties. It's pretty evident. So you're hoping for a clean bill of health because you're playing teams that are going to stress you. And again, with the last 4 weeks, like, Russell Wilson still got some in him, but I don't think they're going to get tested the way they will against potentially a matchup which we're circling right now in pencil. Who knows? There's a lot of steps there, but if you're lining up against the Lions, man, you got to make sure your safeties are healthy and communicating well. So that I don't think I worry so much. I think clearly going to get a good matchup in the playoffs. I don't think it's going to be a overlooked opponent. I think it's going to be a good opponent. The Eagles will come to play. But going for, realistically, it's Super Bowl or bust this year. You got to clear some things up. So playoff wise, there's a little concern, but getting into the playoffs and being competitive, I don't think so.
All right. So, I mean, I completely agree with everything you guys said. And Morgan, the last thing you said about, just them taking a bit of step back and just seeing what works with Devontae and AJ with the next couple of games it would be genius, right? Like, you kind of wish that they did this early on, but injuries happen. We missed AJ for several weeks. We missed Devontae for several weeks. We don't have Dallas Goedert at all. So it's just a matter of just finding a rhythm, repetition, and getting things done. We will be live Saturday morning at 9 a.m. to preview the game, Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers. We do thank you all for joining us live today. If you are on YouTube, be sure you like, subscribe, and comment. We're live every Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. But yeah, until next week, I'm Brian Cameron alongside Morgan Burkett, Zach Chavalella, and Eric Reese. We're flipping the birds.
Go Birds!
Oh, great. My computer froze on the outro.
And you didn't say yes, sir, man. You didn't say yes.
Because it just wasn't
That's
there.
probably why.
Again?
You didn't say yes, sir, and it froze.
It's just freezing up on the outro. I can't.
That's fine. Go Birds. Go Birds.
It's so easy, bro. It's not so easy now, is it?
It won't let me end the podcast.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds. Go Birds.
Does this mean I can't sleep tonight?
Go Birds. This is what happens when he's a Mets fan.
Hey,
Nothing works.
hey,
Just
check
like
this
the
out. Check this out.
lineup.
Ready?
Just like the
Brian,
Mets lineup,
listen.
nothing works.
We all have performance issues from time to time. You know?
It's gonna be 3 days later. We're all just gonna be sitting here because Brian can't find the outro. Like, I don't think we're physically allowed to leave until you end this
Yeah,
podcast.
we're not going live Saturday. We're going live through Saturday.
Right now.
Yeah.
Here.
Exactly.
we can turn this into a Flyers podcast as well. Sorry, Chris.
Oh no, I draw the line.
Flip